At 7:20 on a crisp Tuesday morning, my stepdaughter phoned to announce my husband had passed away during the night and left her the entire estate. Meanwhile, my living husband sat 3 feet across from me, calmly spreading butter over a piece of whole wheat toast. I stared across the table, watching him freeze with his butter knife hovering in midair, wondering how a human being could possibly react to hearing their own obituary over breakfast. My stepdaughter Chloe kept talking into the receiver with a terrifyingly flat voice, explaining that her father was gone and everything now belonged to her. Before I could even process her words, her husband broke in through the background, chuckling softly and declaring that I was finally getting thrown out on the street. Something inside me went completely stone cold as I hit the speakerphone button and set the device right in the middle of our wooden kitchen table. Chloe began describing how she planned to arrive that afternoon to lock down her father's property and strongly advised me to start packing my bags immediately. My husband set his knife down with a soft click, leaned over the microphone and asked if he could at least finish his morning meal before she seized the house. Silence stretched across the line until her husband muttered a panicked curse, and the call abruptly disconnected, leaving us alone with the hum of the refrigerator. My husband stared at the silent screen, clearly more wounded by his daughter's eager tone than by her attempt to claim his money. At 66 years old, Richard had not found retirement particularly kind, having spent 40 years running a heavy commercial plumbing business that battered his body. Ever since he stepped away from work, his bad knee, blood pressure medication, and recent heart issues had turned the once formidable man into someone who occasionally needed my help pulling on his socks. Just 2 nights earlier, a sudden episode of chest pains had landed Richard in the local emergency room for overnight observation. Our neighbor had apparently spotted the ambulance lights and left a dramatic voicemail for Chloe, assuming the worst about her father's health. Instead of calling me to check on her father, Chloe called the hospital, discovered he had already been discharged, and instantly leapt to the conclusion that he was dead so she could claim her inheritance. Richard pushed his breakfast plate away and quietly asked how his daughter even knew what his last will and testament said. 3 weeks earlier, I had caught Chloe crouched beside the lower drawer of his home office filing cabinet, acting suspicious before making a quick excuse. I had let it go back then because I spent 14 years trying not to be the stereotypical second wife, but now I deeply regretted staying quiet about her intrusive behavior. At 8 o'clock that same morning, Richard's phone rang again, bringing the stern voice of his longtime estate attorney on the line. Someone had called the law firm claiming Richard had passed away and cited the specific date of a legal document signed 12 years prior. That old document had indeed named Chloe as the primary heir, but what she did not realize was that Richard had completely updated his estate plan 5 years ago to protect me. Our attorney urged us to drive over to his office immediately so we could address the bizarre situation before it spiraled out of control. Richard sat quietly in the passenger seat of his own truck, staring blankly out the window as I drove us across town through heavy morning traffic. It broke my heart seeing him so quiet, realizing that his own daughter was not mourning his death but was actively waiting for him to pass away. Inside the legal office, our attorney spread out the original paperwork and confirmed that someone had intentionally inquired about the ancient filing. However, under the current estate plan, I was fully protected. The house remained mine and Chloe was only set to receive a reasonable portion, alongside education trusts for her children. When our attorney revealed that Chloe and her husband had inquired months ago about taking over a parent's finances, my stomach turned into knots. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, Chloe and her husband marched straight into our living room, putting on a dramatic show of tearful relief. When Richard asked why she had not simply called my phone first, her husband stepped in with excuses about panic and concern for Richard's health. They quickly shifted the conversation toward his recent driving slip-ups, forgotten appointments, and minor mistakes, slowly building an argument that Richard was no longer mentally capable of managing his life. The very next morning, a court process server arrived at our front door to deliver formal legal papers that completely shattered our world. Chloe had officially filed a petition for legal guardianship, attempting to convince a judge that her father was mentally incompetent. Sitting at the kitchen table, Richard rubbed his face in utter disbelief, realizing his daughter was now trying to take total control of a living man after failing to inherit from a dead one. We immediately hired a sharp elder law attorney named Victoria, who examined the petition and warned us that we had to treat the threat with absolute seriousness. Chloe had cleverly built her case using real physical setbacks, including Richard's heart scare, his knee surgery, and a tiny fender bender in a parking lot. Over the next 2 weeks, Richard had to endure humiliating cognitive tests where doctors asked him basic questions, just to prove his mind was still sharp. Everything shifted when Victoria uncovered text messages where Chloe and her husband openly admitted that Richard would never expose his own daughter publicly. Reading those cold words sparked something powerful inside Richard, making him realize that his endless generosity was being weaponized against him. On the morning of the guardianship trial, Richard put on a sharp suit jacket, grabbed his walking cane, and marched into the courthouse with quiet dignity, ready to confront the betrayal head-on. In court, Chloe presented bank records trying to prove Richard was unfit, but Victoria flipped the evidence, showing Chloe had secretly siphoned nearly $200,000 for her husband's business. The absolute breaking point arrived when Richard looked directly at Chloe and expressed the deep heartbreak of hearing how happy she sounded when she thought he was dead. Brad tried to shift the blame onto Chloe right there in front of the judge, causing the entire fraudulent petition to be instantly dismissed. Winning in court did not instantly heal our family wounds, but it gave Richard his voice back and forced Chloe to finally face reality. Eventually, Chloe offered a genuine apology, acknowledging that she had greedily viewed her father's hard-earned savings as money that already belonged to her. We still sit at our kitchen table enjoying quiet mornings together, fully aware that while aging changes your body, no person on earth has the right to steal your dignity along with it.